Okay, formal welcome to the first Zen Fields Zen of Cooking retreat. So we have made it into the kitchen. We are bringing our practice off of the cushion and into the kitchen. We are bringing enlightenment off of the cushion and into the kitchen. We usually, I'm guessing that most of us here think of practice in terms of what's your meditation practice. If I were to say, how's your practice going? A lot of us would think about, well, maybe it's not so good because I've only practiced 5 minutes this past week. And that's fine. I think meditation is an important and central part of practice. However, moving it into the kitchen where we're at so much of our day and using the kitchen as an opportunity for what we call in Soto Zen, practice enlightenment. And this magazine, Buddha Dharma, could not have come at a better, more appropriate time. If you're not aware of this, Jisho has one of the articles in this magazine, and it's about the instructions to the cook. It's her article is about what we call the three minds, and they are elaborated upon in Zen Master Dogen's instructions to the cook. I'm not going to use the time right now to go into them. It might be something for further study later on, but if you get a chance, you may be able to get this online and read her article. If you type in, let's see, the name of the article is The Three Minds of Zen. The Three Minds of Zen. And just plug that into your search engine and put in Sarah Siebert or Jisho Sarah Siebert, and I bet you'll get a link to it. Right? Or maybe purchase the magazine if you're interested in it. It looks like a really good issue. So here we are in the kitchen, and first of all, I want to share with you something that we just recently included in our kitchen. So at our table here, we have an image of the Buddha in the form of Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva with a candle and some water. And so having making our table itself an altar is one way we have kind of trying to establish practice in our eating space. So it might be something, I'm just gonna, my plan right now is to throw a lot of different ideas and possibilities from Zen cooking into the soup, and you can see what works for you, right? So this is just one thing that we're doing. In most of the temples, in all of the temples that I practiced in, there was always an altar in or very close to the kitchen. And that's to kind of help us to establish. That's one way to help us establish the practice that we are engaged. We're not just doing ordinary cooking. So I wanna read to you from the instructions to the Tenzo Kyokun. It says, from the beginning, in Buddha's family, there have been 6 temple administrators. They are all Buddha's children, and together they carry out Buddha's work. So right from the start, you can see this these first 2 sentences. When he's talking about administrators of a Zen temple, and that they're all carrying out the work of the Buddha, and that includes the cook, right? Among them, the Tenzo. Tenzo is the Japanese word for the head cook, has the job of taking care of the preparation of food for the community. So this is taken really seriously. And we have to keep it in context too, because Zen was in China before it was in Japan. And before it was in China, it was in India. And when Zen or jhana was in India, monks were not permitted to cook food. They were not allowed to work. But look at the cultural thing that happens when Buddhism was transmitted from India to China. Then you have the need for the monks to start cooking. They weren't just going to be handed food by lay people. That's not the way the culture worked in China. So an elaborate ritual became established around cooking and eating food. And this tradition got carried over to Japan as well. So just the idea of monks cooking was foreign to early Buddhism. But as Buddhism travels, cooking becomes a necessary part of practice. And so how do you make something that was forbidden into enlightenment, right? So the Zen Shingi, Shingi means the rules. It says, for serving the community, there is the tenzo. For serving so the head cook is the one who serves the community. Right? Since ancient times, masters with way-seeking mind, lofty people who had awakened their hearts were appointed to this job. So, in engaging in the kitchen as a cook, a Zen cook, we have to bring our awakened mind. Whether we think we have it or not isn't the issue. We need to bring our awakened mind into the kitchen. Right? We have to draw it up. After all, isn't this the single color of diligently engaging in the way? If you do not have the mind of the way, then all of this hard work is meaningless and not beneficial. The Shingi says, you must put to work the mind of the way, offering appropriate variety in the food served, so that the community can feel satisfied and at ease. Right? So this is a huge responsibility for anybody who undertakes cooking. And we want to, first of all, awaken our mind. And that's why I think this statue of Avalokiteshvara, it helps me to remember, oh, okay, wait, this is Buddha's activity that we're engaging in. Right? This isn't just cooking. And food is a miracle. It's an incredible gift. So it's such a great opportunity to witness the gifts that we've been given, and to cultivate gratitude for ourselves, and also to practice serving those in our family, right? Because those are the people we're going to be, our friends maybe, but certainly our family members. Right? So we're bringing awakened energy, awakened life force into our cooking activity, and then serving that awakened food to our family. That's the idea. And it says, make food that has good variety, and that allows the community to feel at ease. That's a formidable challenge, I think, at times. What we'll be cooking today is fairly simple. I just made it real simple. This is something that I've cooked a lot of in the Zen temples. I ate a lot of it, and it's a basic kind of staple. So we're going to make, the first thing is we're going to make brown rice. We're going to make a stir fry, and the stir fry is going to have in it vegetables and protein. So the rice is our grain, and you can substitute a lot of things for grain. It could, like, we often substitute quinoa, but maybe there's other grains that you'd like to use here. But we need some kind of grain as a kind of a staple, a base, and then stir frying some veggies, and then I'm going to just throw in there protein. The protein will be tempeh. And these are foods that I just we have in the kitchen. I didn't go out special to buy them. And this is this is an important aspect of Zen cooking. I thought, what should I make? And as soon as that question popped into my mind, the first thing was, maybe I should scour the cookbooks and see what would be good. And then the second thing was where my Zen training came in was, well, what do you have? If you want to know what to cook, look at what you've got and use that. Right? That's where we start. It makes it really super simple. You don't have to go out with Zen cooking. You don't have to go out to buy anything. If you scour your own kitchen, I'm sure you will find things in there that need to be cooked, that need to be used. And that's where we start. We start at looking in our kitchen, looking in our fridge, seeing what's there, seeing what's there and using what's going to go bad if we don't use it. That's the way to honor the food. And so we don't do a lot of planning ahead. We'll do a little bit of planning, but not a lot. And the instructions for the cook here, it says, here is how it gives some instructions on how to cook. It says, here is how to fulfill the job for a whole day and night. Now, in those days, cooking took place, they only ate 2 meals a day, breakfast and lunch. All right, so it's talking about those 2 meals. First, after lunch, after lunch, consult with the director and assistant director in their offices to get the provisions for the next day's breakfast and lunch. So they're only planning 1 day in advance. And you have to go to the director, get the provisions for lunch. Well, you're probably the director in this case too. So let's listen to the bell here for a few breaths. Take a breath. This is another practice that we've been incorporating into our lives. We have a timer set every 20 minutes. When the bell rings, we stop, pause for 3 breaths, and then continue on. It's a wonderful practice. I highly recommend that you do something similar to it if you're interested, as a way to kind of remind yourself to slow down a little bit, reflect, pause. So whenever I pause for 3, I'll tell you when the bell rings. It goes off every 20 minutes on the hour. And we'll just pause for 3 breaths. So it says, this includes rice, greens, and other items. After you receive them, carefully protect these ingredients as if taking care of your own eyes. I just love that, right? So the ingredients that we're going to cook with are as important as our own eyeballs, right? How would you treat your eyes? See, Zen master Bao Ming said, guard the temple properties as if they were your own eyes. Respect the temple food as if it were for the emperor. So we're making a meal as though it's for a very important person, right? The emperor. This attitude applies to both raw and cooked food, right? So right here, this Tenzo Kyokun, the instructions to the cook, engenders incredible respect for the food we're going to cook with, the food that we're going to consume. And this may not be totally obvious to us when we're not cooking in a kind of Zen context. We just have, it's just food, or we go to the grocery store. Think about how much food is wasted when we are, we go to a restaurant or even in our own homes. So this is an opportunity to start thinking about food in that way. So first thing, let's get started with the first thing, and that is cooking brown rice. This is such a staple in Zen temples. I have here, let's see, our stove, and I've already washed the rice. I've already washed the rice. You can kind of see in there. All right, it's in there. And this is one of the first things I learned how to cook, is brown rice, actually brown rice porridge, something that we ate a lot for breakfast. I'm just gonna cook brown rice now. It's been soaking there for about an hour and a half. And the soaking part is helpful because that helps to soften the rice a little bit. Sometimes if we don't soften it, if we don't soak it, it'll come out as like my teacher would say, like bullets. You try to chew it and it's kind of hard. You ever had rice where it's kind of hard and crunchy? So soaking it can help to soften it a little bit. And then keeping the lid on. So the lid is, and I'm gonna talk a little bit about this lid here. It's so important. We keep the lid on for the duration of the cooking. Don't remove it when you're in the middle of the cooking process. So let's try, and I'll explain that in just a second. I'm gonna turn this on. We've got a gas stove here. There it is. So we got our blue flame. And here's lesson number one. Is actually, these are all lessons, but is have the pot on the center of the flame, right? Make sure it's centered. If it's not centered, you're going to lose the energy, and that's a waste of resources. So make sure your pot is evenly centered on the burner, whatever burner you're using. It's not half off, half on. It's like trying to sit zazen when you're crooked on the cushion, right? We want to be balanced, and everything in a Zen kitchen is a reflection of our mind. Everything in the Zen kitchen is a complete reflection of our mind. The pots and the pans are our very mind and body. The pot itself is the container. It's like our body. It's the container, and the water in which the rice is boiling is our energy. It's our prana, our chi, our life force. It's our vitality. And the lid is our mindfulness. The lid is our mindfulness. If you were to take the lid off, what happens when you take the lid off? When the rice is cooking, well, our prana, our energy just flies right out. It doesn't do its job of going inside the grains of rice. And so that's why we want to keep the lid on the pot, because that is our mindfulness. Now, it's going to be tricky because here's where the middle way in Buddhism comes in. If we want to pay attention to the heat and how much heat is going into it, because at some point we're going to need to turn this way down. If the heat underneath it, the fire is too high, then eventually all of this pressure is just going to boil out over top. And if that heat is too low from the start, it's going to take forever to come to a rolling boil. And that's not what we want either. So we want to find the middle way in our cooking, not too hot, and listening to it without taking the lid off to check. We don't need to check the rice. What we need to do is listen to it. So putting our ear to the lid, like I can already start to hear some movement in there. It's not quite yet, but it's not quite yet ready to turn down, but I will maybe in another couple of minutes. Just listen to it. And we try to turn it down before it boils over. Okay, that's a way to respect it. And this is not just a symbol of our mindfulness, it is our mindfulness. All right, just like we were sitting zazen, we're putting the lid on, we're putting our mindfulness into our body, and that's how practice becomes manifested in our physical body when we're doing meditation, right? It's just like this pot. It's exactly like this pot. And if you have too much heat in your practice, you're not gonna continue, right? It's gonna be too hot and you're gonna quit because it hurts, right? So we gotta adjust the temperature. We gotta adjust the intensity of our practice. I'm gonna turn this down a little bit. I'm gonna start turning this down. I'm turning down that. I'm listening to the pot. Yeah, it's starting to boil, so I'm gonna turn it way down now. Now I might need to crack the lid open a little bit because just like us, when we're under too much pressure, we spill out from the sides. When we're under too much pressure, we can't handle it. and something has to seep out. It has to seep out somewhere. So we want to try to find that right balance there. Yeah, I can hear it boiling now without having removed the lid. It's a nice boil. So I've got it all the way down on low. We're good to go now for I would say, so for this, if you want the rice cooked for a meal in say 20 minutes, then I would keep it cooking for probably the next 10 minutes. I will probably turn this off within the next 5 to 7 minutes and let it sit, because it will continue to cook on its own without having any heat under it. And that is a very efficient way to cook rice. And then we'll have it in a few hours. So just some tips for cooking rice, right? You could always use a rice cooker, but then you lose all of this stuff. You know, you lose your engagement in the process of cooking with a rice cooker. I've used rice cookers before. They're great. They're very, but we lose that kind of mindfulness, the attention needed in understanding like this whole process here and seeing that, oh, this is actually my mind at work. In the olden days, and still some places today, they used wood burning stoves, and they had to get the wood, the amount of wood in there just right, so that the rice would cook properly. Right. So it demands that we have the right amount of attention, the right amount of attention in what we're doing. We got to pay attention. It forces us to pay attention. With a rice cooker, you don't have to pay attention to anything. You just click the button and it's done. And something gets lost in that process. I'm not saying don't use a rice cooker, but this is something really important, I think. Okay. Any questions before we go on to the next part of the cooking? Good. Well, if stuff comes up, you know, let me know. This is our first time doing this cooking class, so you know, I appreciate any feedback you might have. All right. Next thing we're going to do is prepare some vegetables for stir fry. So I have we had some onions that that were used a day or so ago, and I had to make a decision. We have a whole onion in there, or I could use this leftover onion that wasn't used. And so I thought, let's use this first before we go open up another onion. We've got some carrots, some beautiful carrots, and we've got a bag of wonderful Brussels sprouts. The knife is so important that we use. I love to use this particular knife. This kind of knife is great for chopping vegetables. Another knife that I use is a little bit larger, but it's a similar shape. It's just really good for chopping vegetables. And we want to make sure our blade is sharp. This is another Zen lesson, right? So make sure your blade is sharp so that you can actually, the blade of the knife is no different from our mind, right? Our mind needs to be sharpened sometimes, just like the knife. So maybe before starting to cook, if you haven't done this in a while, take your sharpener and, you know, just make sure your knife is going to be nice and sharp for this work. Do that a few times back and forth, sharpening the blade so that our utensils work. It's so important. And it's going to chop through the vegetables much more easily. You won't get carpal tunnel syndrome, or at least the prospects of getting that will be far decreased if you have a good sharp knife to work with. All right, so this is taking care of the utensils as if they were your own eyeballs. All right, so let's start out with the onion. So I want to start out with the things that are I'm gonna put into the frying pan first. So I got these onions here. How to hold the knife is really important, and I keep my body against. This is going to prevent food from spilling out beyond beyond me. It'll I wish I had a, sorry, I don't have a, what do you call it, an apron on, because that would be better. But if you have an apron, use it. When you use a knife, it's good to put your hands, your knuckles right up against it. People cut themselves because they have the knife here and their hands are over here and they think they're going to be safer, but actually the safest place for your hand is right next to the knife, touching the knife blade. Then your other hand, your hand knows where the knife is. If it's over here, it doesn't know where the knife is. If it's touching the knife, it knows where the knife is, and then you can, and then just cutting, making some slices here. There's a number of ways to chop an onion, and I'm just gonna kind of dice it 1/4 inch or so, turn it 90 degrees and then go the other way. Some of the stuff you might be familiar with already. And I am keeping my eye on that rice there. I think it's probably almost ready to turn off. Maybe in another minute or so, I'll turn that off. So our eyes in the kitchen need to be in multiple places at once. This is kind of one of the places where multitasking is permitted. I've got my eyes on the rice, got my eyes on the onion, and then I'm also we're engaged here in this talking. I'm kind of talking, thinking out loud. The other aspect is chopping the vegetables in such a way that you don't make a loud sound, right? When we often go into a kitchen, there might be a lot of this sound is unnecessary. It's really unnecessary if we are mindful, right? It's this nice, smooth chop. You don't have to make a sound. We would often do retreats, sitting retreats, sitting in silence next to the kitchen. And if you were assigned the duty of the cook, then you had to be quiet when you were chopping because other people were sitting in the next room quietly. And so learning how to chop without making a sound is important. So I'm going to put in, I'm going to have onions. I'm going to put in some garlic. Nice few cloves of garlic, and just take the skin off. One way to do that, just kind of crush it in your hands a little bit, kind of squeeze it back and forth. That takes the peel, comes right off there. See that? All right. Now I have a nice full garlic clove. I'll do that with this one too. Just kind of go back and forth a little bit. A wonderful, look at that, just comes right out. Another way to do this with the skin is to use the flat end of the knife and just kind of put that there, and with the heel of your hand, just press down, give it some force there, and then that'll also take it off. So if you don't feel like your fingers can do that, you can just use the flat end of the knife. Comes right off. Get a little bit of crushed garlic. Same thing with this one little one. Now there's these little, so we're going to just discard, I'm going to compost the skins. And sometimes these garlic have a little bit of a head on them that you may want to take off. It's like this one. It's actually the root. So I'm just going to just barely use my knife, just to barely, I don't know if you can see that, just barely take off just a little bit. So I'm not wasting the, actually, I'm just going to leave those roots on there. That I don't think that's going to be an issue so much. The next thing I want to do is ginger. Let me get some more light in here. There we go. Yeah, I want to do some ginger. So I've got this ginger root, and what I'm going to do is take a peeler and take off the skin. Try to take only the skin off. Leave as much of the root intact as possible. As I go here. This root is, we received a gift of ginger. Somebody had one of our friends had a lot of ginger that they were given. And we were just getting ready to leave for our trip to Arkansas, and we didn't you know, we knew we wouldn't be able to use it, so we froze it, and then we thawed some of it out. But when you do that, it gets soft. And actually, now I'm noticing this ginger is no good. I'm gonna have to get rid of it. It's no good, unfortunately. So we will. I can smell it. Unfortunately, that has to go by the wayside. I'm gonna see if we have other ginger in there. I just left it out for an hour and I thought it'd be okay, but it wasn't. Let me try another. Tell you what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take it right out of the freezer. There's another piece here. We'll just use that. So if you have, for some reason, you have extra ginger, it's gonna go bad if you don't use it. Then you can freeze it. So this is frozen and you can use this right out here. I'm just going to take a chunk off of it and then put the rest back into the freezer. It's hard to chop when it's frozen. It's like a block of ice. So I got to use my bigger knife here and just put the rest back in the freezer. Then let's try, this peels fairly quickly when it's frozen like that. Since it's hard, the peel comes off fairly quickly. So this is one way, you know, if you get something that you have too much of and you could freeze it. Ginger freezes fairly well. It keeps fairly well in the freezer for almost indefinitely. It's too bad. It's always a shame when a food goes bad. But that's and this is not to make composting is not like the excuse. Oh, there's our bell. Hold on, I'm gonna take a pause for a few breaths. So composting is a good way to use, is a good way to respect and honor the food, but it doesn't mean I'm feeling better about. Well, maybe a little bit better that food went bad, but generally I try to reserve compost for things like banana skins, you know, inedible things. When food goes bad, I guess it's the last recourse for it. And it's better than putting it in a garbage can where it just will become, it becomes methane gas, which is not really good for the environment. So if you have the capacity to compost on any level, I would highly recommend it as part of your cooking practice. Now, if you have if you have any dirt around you, make it into a garden or compost your food. You can use that compost then to grow flowers or other vegetables. And it's a wonderful way to see the interdependence between ourselves, our food, and in the food that if we can grow it in our own yard. There's a number of ways we can work with this ginger here. One is just to use the knife and chop it. Another way is using a grater. So I'm going to use. I don't usually do this because it takes some time to get it out of the grater, but I'm going to do it because maybe some of you don't know about this. So I use the small end of a grater, or the small size of the grater, and I got my ginger here and just grate that ginger up nice and fine. Be careful of your fingers so you don't cut them in the process. You'll probably have a little piece left that you'll have to end up using the knife to cut, but when you grate it like this, it diffuses through the veggies maybe a little bit more evenly. Flavor comes out just a bit more. Yeah, so we got to be awake to the food that we have, and if it's spoiled, we need to know that it's spoiled and not use it. It's just the way it goes. Impermanence comes to raise its head. Okay, so I have this little tiny piece left, and I'm just going to use my knife to make it smaller. I can't get grated. I can't get that grated on that little tiny grater, so I'm just using my knife to mince it a little bit more. All right, just a fan kind of mince. When I say fan, so it's a way of using the knife. You go like an oscillating fan back and forth like this. And notice I'm hardly making any sound. Right? Just back and forth like that. The way to do this is to keep this end of the knife on the cutting board. Right, and then you just lightly go back and forth here on what you're chopping if you want to mince. Okay, so all that good stuff, we'll take it on the knife and we're going to just put it with the rest of the ginger in this container for when we're ready to put it in the stir fry. All right, take it off of there. I got a bunch on here. I want to keep that stuff, so I'm just going to use my hands and pick it up. Look at all that stuff. Good ginger, so healthy for us. Ginger is so good for your joints, good for digestion, good for your throat, kills bacteria. Just a wonderful antiseptic properties. All right, try to get this stuff out of there. You could add it. Sometimes I use ginger to add to like a protein shake, fruit smoothies. It's a wonderful thing. You don't even have to go through the process of what I just did. You just add the whole thing. If you have a good blender, add a chunk of ginger, take off the skin, add the chunk of ginger to the smoothie, and you get this nice little ping and a nice little sting for your mouth. Okay, let's do the garlic now. We're just going to mince the garlic up. So I'm just going to do one clove at a time. These cloves are big enough. And just keeping my finger. See, it's kind of making like a circular motion with my right hand. You see how my hand is moving here? It's kind of like a circular motion here. Right, I'll just slow it down here. Just up and back and down and forward. It's Tai Chi of the knife, of the chopping, right? It's Tai Chi chopping, Tai Chi knife. Right, we're making it sort of down and forward and up and back, down and forward. Just that's the motion. And once you get it in your body, once you feel it in your wrist, then you can pick up the pace a little bit. My fingers are right on the knife, right? So my fingers know where the knife is. And it's very important that the fingers that are not holding the knife, to curl them under a little bit. That way you ensure you're not going to chop your finger when you cut. Right? Just keep them right up, your knuckle on the knife, fingers a little bit curled under. And just make that nice smooth, no sound. All right, now I'm going to do that fanning motion with the garlic. So I'll make a little pile of garlic, put it all together. Because this garlic's a little bit big, I find one point, a fulcrum, and then like an oscillating fan, go back and forth. Going back and forth. All right, remove that stuff from the knife every so often. Put it back in a pile. And we do it again. Same thing, just make it smaller. You decide how small you want to make your garlic. All right. And just take that off the knife. All right, now couple more things. We're going to do the carrots. Carrots are just a wonderful, wonderful vegetable. We're going to go next to the sink here. Work with the carrots a little bit. Carrots help the eyes to see, both the physical eye and the spiritual eye. So we take our carrots, give them a little rinse, shake off the water, and we want to. A lot of times, people will just lop off the whole end of the carrot, like they'll just see the carrot like that and just be like, whoosh. And but in a Zen monastery, every piece of the carrot is precious. And so I'm just going to take the very edge of the knife here and just kind of take off just the black part, that part of the root. We don't want to have that. Okay, so just look how tiny, right? Just a little piece comes off of the top. You don't have to lop off the whole thing. All right, then that's going to go in the compost bin. And instead of using a peeler, I'm going to use the back of my knife to peel the carrot. That saves, I'm not going to use as much, I'm not going to take off as much of the skin that might be edible, right? So just this is a way to kind of clean the carrot. Just use the back end of your knife and scrape it, of course, away from your hand towards the end of the carrot. Go all the way around it, maybe once or twice until you see it's clean. This end is kind of black, so I'm going to remove that. Just take it right up there. And I'll just put all that skin, I'm just going to put it into directly into the compost bin. Then I'm going to do the other side of the carrot. Same thing. Just do it, turn it. When you use a peeler, you're peeling off edible stuff. And I'm probably peeling off edible stuff here too, but it's just a little bit less. And in that way, I show my love for the carrot. I put respect for the gift the carrot is giving me, giving us, giving the community. I see a little bit of black here, so I'm just going to kind of try to scrape that off a little bit so as to respect the carrot, respect the gift of food that has come my way today. I don't know if it'll be here tomorrow, but today it's here. So I want to honor it and respect it. All right, carrot number 1 done. I got one more carrot here, same deal. Just take the top off a little bit. It's not much of a top on this one. And the bottom of it, this is kind of black here, so we're just going to remove that. This carrot, you can see, has been around a while. It's soft, right? It's not the perfect carrot. Usually carrots are, but the Tenzo Kyokun tells us, use the ingredients you have. Don't disparage an ingredient because it's not superior. All right, that's not seeing with the eyes of interbeing. We want to use the eyes of interbeings. Hey, all of this stuff is gift from the universe. Let's take good care of it, use it, and respect it that way. Take good care of it. I'm just removing the skin a little bit. All right. And then I'm going to rinse that off a little. Rinse the knife off a little bit. I'll get those scraps in a bit. Shake that. Okay, so I have some carrots that are ready to be chopped. I'm gonna put them in a different part of the cutting board. So try to use this one cutting board right here. Sometimes if you don't have that much to cook, you can just get it all on one cutting board. All right, now I have to decide what kind of shape I want to make with my carrots. And I think what I'll do is make half moons. Okay, so I'm gonna just cut the carrot down the center. And it depends on how much time the thinner you make your vegetables, the quicker they'll cook. Right? So you decide how thick you want to make your carrot for this stir fry. Set that in one pile there, and then go on to the next one. Cut it down the center. And then cut it in half. Or not, I'm sorry, make half moons here. There's no sound, hardly any sound, no chopping sound here. Instead of using the blade of the knife to push the food against the cutting board, if you flip it over, you save the blade. The blade doesn't get dulled as quickly. Okay, so let's just do this last one. We'll have most of our veggies prepped here. Same thing. All right, we got it, not done. And then the next thing is the beautiful Brussels sprouts. They've been around, right? You see the yellow on it, so I'm gonna have to remove that stuff, but it can all go in the compost. If you're really hungry, you could eat this stuff too. But then, you just take that down. So a lot of times people will see Brussels sprouts that are all yellow like this and they'll just throw them away. But if you remove the outer skin, look, you get a beautiful green Brussels sprout underneath. You honor the food that you're going to be eating. You don't have to have perfect food. You just need to look at it more carefully and see what's edible and what's not. And then this is the lesson. We all have way more than we think we do. And oftentimes we throw out things because we think they're not good enough for us. When in reality, there's still more life in them. There's an old story of a I can't remember what that person was. He was tending the fire and he told his teacher, there's no more wood left. There's no more charcoal for the fire. And the teacher says, let me see. So he goes over to the stove and he takes his pincher, the prongs, and starts moving around in the ashes, and he comes out with a burning hot coal to show the student that you have more here. You just didn't look closely enough. And that's what cooking can teach us, is that we have more available to us than we think often. We end up throwing things away because we think we don't have enough, but in reality, look at that beautiful Brussels sprout, looks like brand new. Right here, look, all this, the top skin's no good, but I just take off that skin that doesn't look so good, and we got a pretty nice Brussels sprout with that. All right, the same thing with this. So I'm just going to go through and take all that out. I'm putting it in a separate bowl so that I know which ones I've done already. This one's, some of them are okay. Some of them you don't even need to get rid of any of the leaves. Right. Just, look around, feel it with your hands. So we see with our eyes, but we also see with our fingers, right? So when you feel the vegetable, you can kind of get a sense of the skin and whether it's good or not just with your eyes, but also with your fingers, right? When veggies start to get kind of slimy, they're no good. That's how I knew with the ginger it was no good anymore. It was slimy, and then I smelt it and I could smell, oh, this is definitely no good. So you don't want to eat stuff that's going to make you sick. But we use our senses, you use all of our senses that we have in preparing a meal, right? Use your eyes, use your fingers, your sense of touch, use your sense of smell. It's so important, right? Especially if you're cooking something on the stove, we want to use our sense of smell all the time. We should have a heightened sense of smell because we want to know if something's burning or not. See, like this one, slime. I got a feeling of slimy. Let's take it down. Look at all that junk. Let's see if we can find a decent core here that is actually edible. I don't know if we will. I'm just taking, yeah, it's slimy. So yeah, see that? I'm just gonna kind of peel off more until I get down to a layer that's not so slimy. Maybe you have to take a good chunk of it off sometimes. And try to salvage as much as possible. Yeah, yeah, so there, I took it down, and look at that beautiful cabbage. It's another example of how we're continually peeling ourselves, and sometimes we just got to peel off the outer layer, and then we get to what's underneath, and it's beautiful, it's good. We think sometimes we're no good, but we forget that, oh, it's just the top layer that needs to come off. There's another example of our mind being in the vegetables, right? This is where our mind is. Our mind isn't just in our body. Our mind is everywhere, including in these beautiful vegetables. This is ourself, right? This is myself. This is my mind, right here. That's in Zen mind. Zen mind is no other than this Brussels sprout in this moment, right? That's my mind, and this is taking care of my mind. All right. I just got a few more. Thanks for your patience here. Let's take off that. And yeah. Okay. My bowl is a little bit too small for the rest of these. We'll see. I will probably just put them back into this. Or maybe not. Yeah, just that one. So I knew if I don't use these soon, they are gonna go. So that's, oh, there's our bell. Let's take a moment to breathe. All right, as I finish this up, I just want to open up for you guys to have any, if you have any questions or comments about what I'm doing, or.
Hi, this is Liz. I have a question.
Yeah.
What kind of knife is that?
You know, I just got it. Well, I got two different knives here. This one, I think we got at Target. It's Hampton Forge is the name.
Hampton Forge?
Hampton Forge. I just got that. It was in a block of knives. But if you go to like a kitchen store, this one I got individually at a cooking store in Pennsylvania before I left the temple, because I knew I'd need a knife. And this is called a Proctor Silex.
Okay.
And you know, I just wanted to get something that had this curve, like this curved edge is so important. This is so good for vegetables, right? So we just got to know our knives. A serrated knife is better for fruits because it cuts into the skin of the fruit better. Other kind of serrated knife is good for breads and things like that, you know. And then you have like with these blocks, like a knife like this is more for cooking meat, for cutting meat.
Okay.
Right. So it's this curved edge that I think is really helpful. This one, you know, I barely use this knife, if ever. I don't know if I've used this knife. It's harder to chop with because it's too, right? It's too rounded here. You got to use your wrist more. So I just don't use it. It's not, I think it's more for cooking meat. Yeah, like here's another one. It's just thin, right? Compare these two. I don't know if you can see that, it's thin.
Yeah.
All right, this is more for like meat. And this one is more for veggies.
And then I also wanted to say, I mean, I love Brussels sprouts, and I've peeled them down quite a bit, but then I've purchased Brussels sprouts that down further in the bag. It looks like insect holes or something in them. I don't know. Have you seen those kind that have like round circles in the leaves?
Yeah, yeah. Well, just yeah, what do you do with them?
Yeah.
I mean, as long as the leaf is intact, I just eat it. I mean, bugs. I think that's a good sign. It means it hasn't been oversprayed. So if you
Oh,
have some bugs, if you have some holes in it that bugs have got into, that means it's, it hasn't been sprayed as much, and so you're not getting all those chemicals in it. So I think that's a good sign, as long as the leaf is in fairly good tact. A lot of times you'll have, so I'm just going to rinse these off. A lot of times you'll have vegetable leaves. Like if you grow your own vegetables, especially if you don't use a lot of pesticides or any at all, you'll have, invariably you'll get insects chomping on things. But the great thing is that you won't have the pesticides on them. And oftentimes the leaves will be just as good. Even, you share them with nature. It's kind of like saying, all right, I'm going to make a donation to the insects.
okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's kind of my thinking about little holes and things. Of
Okay.
course, you want to check it and make sure there's not like, it's not gone bad. It's not like, if it's slimy to the touch, that's definitely a sign that something maybe needed to be thrown out.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah,
Hi, this is Navab.
yeah.
I have a question regarding who else is in the kitchen helping the Tenzo? Was he alone or she alone or
Oh, you mean in
in
general,
the
like as it like
kitchen? Well,
kind of
yeah,
theory? You mean in
cooking.
theory? Are there other people helping the Tenzo?
Yes,
Absolutely, yeah. The Tenzo does not do everything by him or herself. They have assistant Tenzos and they have other cooks doing prep work and that kind of thing. But that's not always the case, right? You can't always depend on other people to help you out. And so it depends on the place. If you're in a large monastery, then yeah, you probably have a lot of helpers.
yeah.
You can't do all that work just by yourself. You need to rely on other people to help you out.
So is the Tenzo, does he does he instruct everyone else? I'm talking because the Western kitchen is the head chef seems to be more of a supervisor and tells people what to do.
Yeah, there's certainly that function.
What does the is the Tenzo similar or?
Yeah, it can. Yeah, they can be. I mean, again, if a Tenzo is working in a large monastery with lots of people, then chances are they won't be cooking the meal all by themselves. They'll have a lot of people helping them out as their job, and then yeah, the head cook, it tells those that are doing the chopping of the vegetables how to do it, and they'll tell them like what size to make the vegetable. So like what thickness, if I have this Brussels sprout, what thickness I'm making them like 1/4 inch thick. So a Tenzo might give you an example, say, hey, cut it about that thin.
Mhm.
And then you leave that there to see it and make sure you cut the vegetables so that they're the right thickness. And it's a job, for somebody who's not the Tenzo cooking, it's a job in letting go of ego, because then you might have some ideas of how you're supposed to cook it, but somebody else is in charge. So you got to let go of your ideas and just follow what the person who's the head cook wants, because they're ultimately responsible for it.
Thank
But
you.
I've often been in places where I'm the only one in the kitchen. In Pennsylvania, that was at Mount Equity Zendo in Pennsylvania. I was often it was me who was the Tenzo. There was nobody else, unless we had a retreat going on. And so I would be responsible for cleaning and washing up the vegetables and cooking the meal and serving it and everything. But if you have like a retreat situation, it's different. You have a lot of people helping you out. In that case, I would be more of an overseer where I would plan the meals and then give people instructions on what to do with the vegetables. And then and they would do that, and then other people would be serving the vegetable or the food, the meal. So it just kind of depends on what situation you're in, what your role is in that position.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, any other questions? Just got a few more to do here. I think what I'm going to do is, while I'm chopping these, I'm going to turn on the frying pan. I'm going to get this frying pan on. So here we go. Let's turn that on. So it's hot and ready. Ready for the vegetables when I'm ready.
Daishin, this is Koyu.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went to Mount Tremper once for a weekend, and you know, part of the weekend is work practice, and so that you know you're chosen what work you're going to do, whether it's something inside or outside, and there's kitchen work, and that's exactly the Tenzo tells the workers what to do. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so you had that experience. That's great.
Mm-hmm. And when you're at a large monastery like that, it's a huge industrial kitchen, you know.
Oh, yeah.
It's yeah, there's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah. And here's the other thing that is important to keep in mind with cooking, with the job of the Tenzo, is that there are 3 parts to every job. There's 3 parts to every job. There's the preparation period, right? So that's what we're doing right now. We're preparing the vegetables. There's the cooking of it. There's the cooking of the vegetables and of the food. And then there is the, not the eating of it, but the cleaning up afterwards. So it's like the art of cooking, really. We want to maintain a clean kitchen at all times. And so once the cooking is completed, we make it a point to clean up after ourselves. All right, just a few more of these. Almost there. I'm just taking off the very tip of these. So it's a labor, right? It can also be very meditative, right? Because you're doing the same thing again and again, just repeating chopping motions one at a time. So you got to develop some patience here, but it's also a way to get us intimate with the food, to think about where the food comes from. That, you know, that's so important part of this cooking too, is that we think about, where does this food come from? Who grew it? Whose hands picked these Brussels sprouts before they got to the store, before they got into my shopping cart? Whose hands touched these? What truck and what driver delivered them to the store? Right? And we start to see our interdependence. It's like, who were these people that prepared this food this far to get it from the ground? You know, who were the farmers that planted the seeds for these Brussels sprouts? Like, this comes from a seed. Who did that? All right, I'm noticing my pan is ready to go here, so I am going to add the onions I'll start frying this up. It's going to start making some noise here. Let me turn this around. I'm going to keep my starting to smoke. So I'm talking too much. I got to get going. All right. So I'm starting out. I'm just going to put the onions in as kind of a base. Need to get some more oil in this pan. Start stirring it up a little bit. I like using.
Daishin,
Yeah, go ahead.
what oil do you use? Do you use ghee or something else?
I'm using just coconut oil, but
Okay.
I also use olive oil a lot. General rule, I just use what you got, but I tend to shy away from processed canola oil, or oils with canola in it, just because the processing of canola oil is apparently not very good for human beings. I don't know if any of, maybe you all have more knowledge about that than I do. Anybody heard of that?
Yes, I have heard that canola oil, the processing is more poisonous than,
Yeah, if you can get canola oil that's, I think it's cold pressed, it's more expensive. Where I lived in Pennsylvania, in Williamsport, they had a farmer's market, and they would let me move this pot out of the way. They would, there was one vendor that sold cold pressed canola oil there, and so I would make it a point to buy it in bulk because it was so good. So if you can find things that are more locally produced, more locally purchased, locally grown, that's always better health-wise, for not just health for your human body, but also for the planet. The food doesn't have to be shipped from 2,500 miles away. Right. So I'm just gonna, I'm just getting that onion going. I want to put a little salt in there to melt the onions, get them to release some of their water. So just sprinkle a little salt on there. Stir it up a little bit. And now I start looking at the cooking times of things, and Brussels sprouts are going to take the longest because they're the thickest, and so I want to put those in first. I'm going to hold off on putting that. Sometimes people put ginger in at this time, but I think ginger cooks up really quickly. So I'm gonna hold off on the ginger. I'm gonna put the Brussels sprouts in first, or next rather. It's got a little bit of onion here. I want to make sure I get that onion in there. I'm gonna hold off on the ginger and the garlic until a little bit later. Just want to keep moving this around to get that nice smell. And just like our practice, if we stay in one spot too long, we get burned, right? So this is another example of how our mind works. If you stay in the frying pan in one spot too long, you get burned. But if you keep moving around, you get cooked well on all sides. All right, so if you feel like you're burning, you know, symbolically, figuratively speaking, if you feel like you are under way too much pressure or something like that, maybe it's a sign to get moving, do something different, change where you're presently at, and allow yourself to be cooked where you are not yet cooked. This is about cooking our life, not cooking the vegetables, but cooking ourselves. All right, I'm going to put these Brussels sprouts in, and I'm going to add a little water to them because that'll help them cook up faster. Now you could put these Brussels sprouts in the oven and do it that way, but I think the way I've been taught is you use less energy by putting them up on the frying pan. I mean, you could do it in the oven too, but I'm just gonna put a little water in there and then get my lid on it so that so we get that steaming process going, right? You get the lid of mindfulness on there, just like the other one, just like with the rice, get your lid of mindfulness on. And we can add some seasoning to this too. So another good oil to add is sesame oil. So I'm going to add that maybe more towards the end. I'm going to also add a little bit of, so here's our sesame oil, right? So sesame oil and a little, call it soy sauce, or I use this stuff, Bragg's liquid aminos. We'll put some of that in for seasoning. Let's see what else we got in here on the door. I don't know what else I want to put. Anybody have any ideas? Vinegar is sometimes nice. Yeah, I'll put a little balsamic vinegar in it, right? Put a little bit of balsamic vinegar in it. That'll make it nice. So just keep the flavors fairly simple. Let that cook a little bit. Let it soften. I'm going to let it soften maybe another couple of minutes, and then I'll add the carrots. And while that's cooking, I am not waiting. I'm not waiting for it to cook. I am, but I'm also cleaning up. I'm washing the dishes now that I'm no longer, they're no longer necessary for me to be using. So come over here. Here's the thing, it's when you enter a Zen kitchen, there is always something to do. And people have often asked me, what should I do? And actually, you don't even need to ask. Just look at the sink and see what is in the sink. Take a few breaths here. Hold on. So while the Brussels sprouts are cooking, I'll wash the dishes. And that's something, this is an easy way to help out around your household if you're not the dominant cooker. If you kind of take a backseat role in cooking, then you can always help your partner out by checking out the sink and see what needs to be washed, or just asking, how can I help? What needs to be done if you're not sure? But there's always in the kitchen, in the Zen kitchen, there's always something that you can do. It's a practice of doing rather than being, right? We be on the cushion, but we do in the kitchen, and both are equally important practices. It's not like Zazen is more important than washing the knife. Both important. Now, I just washed that with water because it has no fat on it. There's no oils. I didn't cut any meat products with it, right? It's just vegetables. So I just used a little bit of water, cleaned it off, wiped it with my hand. It's good. Same thing with this cutting board. It's all, actually this had onion on it. So yeah, I'll probably put a little soap on it. Get this, because the onions tend to stay in the wood. Just get a little bit of, just try to use minimal amounts of water. You want to, of course, use the right amount of water to rinse things off. So that's very important to get that soap off of there. But being mindful with the amount of water usage is also part of our practice in the kitchen. Make sure that's all washed off. And then we'll put it on the drying rack to drip dry. This bowl had the Brussels sprouts in it, so I'm just going to rinse it with water, right? There's no real need to use soap on something like that, unless you have like somebody in your household with an infectious disease. Okay, I'm going to add I've still got more things to, wash, but I am going to add these carrots here. Time to add the carrots. Use my glove. Yeah, those Brussels sprouts are looking good. They're smelling good. And I'll just take these carrots, add them in. They're not going to take as long. So they get and then the other thing is the colors. So you can see that the green and the red go well together. So we want to make our food, the colors beautiful, something that contrasts well. Right, look at that, the green and the red in there look nice together. We eat, the Japanese say we eat with our eyes as much as we eat with our mouth, right? The first thing we eat with is our eyes. It's the eyes that look at the food and how it's prepared. So to make a colorful combination is always pleasing to the senses, right? So I'm going to, I think I'll just add this garlic now as well. Use my wooden knife just to scrape it off the cutting board, get it in there, mix it around a little bit. And the garlic, what I found with garlic is that it will cook, it'll get steamed in there. So there's not like a real need to fry it up beforehand. You can use the steam just to add a little bit more water to this and then cover it up. Just mix it around here a little bit, it'll cook nicely. You can already start to smell it. You can smell the garlic cooking now. Another antiseptic, good antiseptic properties to it. And I just mix the water through there. So it's cooking by steaming as well as frying. It's kind of a dual method there. And maybe I'll add a little bit of balsamic vinegar. Next, I'm going to put a little balsamic vinegar in there, just to give it some taste. And mix that through a little bit. Wonderful, almost done here. And we have this wonderful ginger here. I think I'm going to put this in pretty soon as well. And that'll really give it a nice flavor. I sometimes question whether I should put it in now or just before it's ready to be served, but then the longer I leave it out too, it's kind of loses its flavor. So I'm just going to put it in. I'm just going to put it in now. That ginger in there. Try to do it quickly so we don't lose that steam, right? Try to do it as quick as possible so you're not losing the steam from that. And I'm just going to mix that in there. And then put the lid on. I'll wait on the soy sauce and the sesame oil. Those can go in later. So that's going. I'm going to just leave that on there for maybe another minute or so and then turn it off. And while I do that, finish cleaning up here. And then we can go and sit. And now at that time, you know, once you get everything cleaned up, then you really are ready for zazen. You've been doing a lot of work, and now you're ready to do some non-work. You can experience the fruit of your activity. So it's really important. These two things go hand in hand. Cooking and sitting go hand in hand. We really don't sit well unless we work well. Right? So we want to put everything we can into our work. And then when it's time to sit, we will sit deeply. Right? That's at least the theory behind it. And I've just found that to be the case for me. If I work hard, then it's easier to sit and do nothing. Just rinsing this stuff off with some water, except for this cutting board, I will use the little bit of soap. Get that sudsed up a little bit. And rinsed off. So this is the concluding part of the, this is the third part. This is the cleanup phase of the job of the tenzo. This is the cleanup phase. So I want to take this is a really important part, how we treat the rag that we wash with is how we treat our own mind. So I'm going to rinse out the rag, get all the soap off of it, squeeze it tight. All right, get that soap off, and then spread it out so that it will dry properly without attracting mold or fungus to it. Right, so just let it dry properly. We have this this nice wooden thing, and just put this, drape it on the top of it like that, and then let that dry. Or sometimes I just drape it over the edge of the, kind of like that's just that, so that it's open, right? It's our way of respecting the material. Same thing with this. This is the counter cloth. I'm going to just rinse that out. Spray a little bit of vinegar water on the countertop to get rid of any microbes or things like that might be on the surface. Keep the surface clean. I use a little, this is just water mixed with vinegar. So I'm just going to spray around the cooking area, place where I was chopping vegetables. Put a few squirts of that. Wipe down the countertop. Make sure my hand is flat so that I really get all through there, all the surfaces well. All right. All right, get the surface nice and clean, the way it was before I started. And then all of these scraps go in the compost, which will eventually go out into our garden. Shake that out a little bit, right? Shake that out a little bit. And then clean out the sink of those the carrot scrapings and some of the Brussels sprout skins. All right, and I think I'm about done here in the kitchen. I turned off the oven so that the veggies will continue to cook. In fact, because I'm not quite ready to eat them, I'm going to take the lid off so they stop cooking. That way they don't get too soft. The key for vegetables is not to overcook them. They can easily be overcooked, and you get vegetables that nobody wants to eat if they're overcooked. And that's common, and I think a lot of us don't know how to cook vegetables well, and we end up overcooking them. We want to have vegetables that are still crisp and tender, not overdone. So actually, I'm even going to remove this from the pot so that it really stops cooking, because it'll just keep cooking even though the heat's off. I'm going to put it into a smaller bowl, or maybe a larger bowl, so that it can cool faster. And then later, when we're ready to eat, we will just have everything ready to go. I get the nice smell of ginger in here. I will probably add a little sesame oil and soy sauce to this just before we're ready to serve it up. But very simple stir fry, something you can do with whatever is hanging around your house. And you can use the vegetables in your own refrigerator. Just keep in mind the cooking time. Thick vegetables take longer to cook than thinner vegetables. All right, so there you have it. We have our version of the stir fry. Very fun. You can see the carrots mixed through. I don't know if you can see that. Let's see. See the carrot. There it is. So that's stir fry, and then in this pot is the rice. This should be cooked. Let's see. There it is. It's all cooked up there for you. Okay, I'm gonna turn that off. Can't leave a kitchen with lights on, so we gotta make sure we check the light switches, turn off the lights that are not being used, and we can do a final bow to Avalokiteshvara as we exit the kitchen. Thank the universe, the powers that be, that sustain us, that give us life, And I take a little bow to the Buddha. And yeah, that's it. So we have about 15, a little bit more than 15 minutes left, and we could use the time to, if you have questions or if you want to sit a little bit, we can do some zazen.
I had a question. What was the protein in it?
Oh, shoot. That's what I left out, didn't I? It's supposed to be
What would,
tempeh.
okay, I don't know what that is.
Okay, yeah. You know what? I'm so sorry. There's my
It's okay.
trying to do
It's
too
not-
many things at once. So Ted, let me go back here. I'm going back in here. So that would have been good to add too. Yeah. Thank you so
Soybean.
much, Liz. That would have been really
It's
good. To add.
soybeans?
Yeah, it's made out of soybean.
Yeah, fermented. Let me
I'm
just
not
show
sure.
you.
Daishin, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's fermented soybeans. It depends. You can get them different kinds. This is three grain tempeh, and it's soy, a couple other things. I think maybe rice.
Okay,
It's
I just, yeah, I don't know. I've heard the term, but I've never
yeah. This has
understood what
soy,
it is.
barley, brown rice, and millet in it, and it's basically
Okay.
fermented. It looks like that.
Okay,
And I would have, if I had used this, I would have added it to the stir fry just after the onions. I would have cooked that up right at that
Okay.
time. But as it is, I will probably have to fry this later then I'll just add it in this evening when we're ready to eat. It doesn't take more than a few minutes to fry up. So that's what I'll do later. I added an extra step for myself. That's what happens. So we reflect. We reflect on how we did, and then we can improve ourselves, see where we could improve ourselves, opportunity to reflect on our practice and see where we could do better. All right. Come back upstairs. Oh.
Daishin, I have a
Yeah.
silly question.
Yeah,
Do you guys use a dishwasher?
we don't have one actually.
Okay. I sort of figured you didn't, but thought I'd ask.
Yeah, I have an ambivalent feeling towards dishwashers. I know that they're supposed to be more water efficient, but I wonder how true that is, just because people tend to run the faucet for minutes on end or longer, it seems, when they wash the dishes by hand, sometimes unnecessarily. And you could see when I was washing the dishes, I just used the water that's needed to clean off that knife and not like put it on full blast and keep it running. The other thing is with dishwashers, you don't get the chance to actually see the dishes as part of your own mind. I mean, you could when you put them into the dishwasher, that process there, that's important. But there's something about scrubbing and cleaning the dishes yourself that gets lost when we use a dishwasher. I don't want to begrudge anybody their dishwashers. I think that's what you need. That's what you got to use and to use it. But just to know that there's something that gets lost in the process of a machine doing the dishes for you. Whereas when we're doing the dishes ourselves, we are that's an opportunity to um, clean our own heart mind, right? Whenever we're washing the dishes, we're washing our heart. It's not just doing something external there. We're not doing something external to something outside of ourselves, but we're washing our own heart mind. And if we can see the dishes in that light, it's a whole different experience. But again, I don't want to begrudge anybody for using a dishwasher either. I know that sometimes we need to do it that way. All right, well, maybe we'll just sit for the last little bit here. We have about 12 minutes. We can use this opportunity to sit a little bit. And I just want to thank you so much for your attention to the practice of the Tenzo. It really is a practice. How we practice off the kitchen, how we practice off the cushion, and in the world. And you can see there's so many aspects to practicing off of the cushion in our own homes. So I hope that this was helpful or meaningful to you in some way, that maybe something was gained from this offering today. Not a lot of sitting, but an opportunity to perhaps witness, practice, and practice off of the mat. Okay, thank you.